The Apprentice 2024, A Beautiful Lie. Narration tone calm, precise, unhurried. Each sentence should sound measured, as if the critic is dissecting an organism under bright light. Ali Abbasi's The Apprentice arrives wrapped in moral confidence, a film that promises to unmask the machinery of power, to show us how a man named Donald Trump became who he is. It carries itself like a revelation. But the only thing it truly reveals is cinema's own talent for lying beautifully. This is not a film about Trump, nor about Roy Cohn, his notorious mentor. It is a film about the way art, politics, and commerce now collude to turn outrage into a profitable aesthetic. Abbasi has crafted not an exposé but a mirror. And the reflection is of us, an audience addicted to certainty, hungry for villains that flatter our virtue. The film pretends to condemn manipulation, yet it thrives on manipulation. It denounces the spectacle of power, yet it is a spectacle of power. Every frame whispers moral superiority, and every frame, ironically, depends on distortion. The false mirror of morality, Roy Cohn in Abbasi's hands, is no longer the brilliant, vicious, complex creature who haunted mid-century America. He has been purified into a symbol, the embodiment of corruption, the diseased patriarch of a political apocalypse. His intellect, his contradictions, his loneliness erased. Cohn's real tragedy was that he was both monster and man. Abbasi grants him only the mask of the monster. Trump, meanwhile, is drawn as a blank student, a vessel for greed, a puppet of ambition. He has no internal logic, no mystery. He is not even dangerous. He is simply shallow. That makes the film safe. A real Trump, a man with charm, insecurity, humor, and wounds, would have demanded understanding. This Trump demands only condemnation. And condemnation, unlike comprehension, sells tickets, turning pain into propaganda. The cruelest moment of The Apprentice is not a scene of cruelty, but the treatment of Cohn's death. In history, he died of AIDS in 1986, abandoned, feared, and stripped of the power that once terrified half of New York. He was a victim of his own brutality, yes, but also of a society that equated illness with sin. Abbasi could have shown us this man's final loneliness as a mirror of our own prejudices. Instead, he uses it as decoration, the tragic flourish before the end credits. The camera turns Cohn's suffering into a tableau of retribution, a moral postcard for liberal audiences who want to believe that evil always dies alone. The film pretends to mourn him, but its grief is theatrical, not human. It offers compassion as spectacle and calls it justice. The disease of didactic art. Abbasi believes he is dissecting power. In truth, he performs it. He builds a world where power is inescapable, where every act of teaching, touching, or ambition is already infected. When Cohn teaches Trump to never apologize, to attack rather than defend, Abbasi presents it as the seed of a political apocalypse. But he never pauses to ask the harder question: why do such lessons appeal to us? Why do entire cultures admire confidence more than truth? The result is moral reduction. The teacher-student dynamic becomes a convenient metaphor, not an inquiry into human need. In real life, mentorship can liberate. In this film, it only corrupts. Growth becomes betrayal. Learning becomes infection. Abbasi's world has no genuine teachers, only tyrants in disguise. The paradox of toxic masculinity. Critics call The Apprentice a study of toxic masculinity. But masculinity itself is not toxic. Repression is. The sickness is not desire. It is the fear of feeling. Roy Cohn's obsession with control, his denial of vulnerability, his manipulation of intimacy, these were his poisons. Trump, as depicted here, inherits the disease. A man convinced that to win love, he must never show need. Abbasi captures the gestures but misses the meaning. He films bodies colliding, voices rising, eyes locked in tension. But what we see is choreography, not revelation. The film mistakes pathology for profundity. It aestheticizes domination. Control in Abbasi's lens becomes art, and art, stripped of empathy, becomes pornography of power. The economics of outrage. Why does a film like this exist? Because outrage is currency. Because in the divided democracies of the 21st century, half the world despises Trump and the other half defends him, and both halves are profitable audiences. European festivals reward moral clarity, American critics reward political affirmation, and streaming platforms reward controversy. Abbasi understands this perfectly. He does not sell insight. He sells the illusion of insight. He sells what the market demands, the comfort of believing that our side is righteous. In that sense, The Apprentice is not the story of Trump at all. It is the story of us, of how we, the enlightened viewers, buy our own self-image in cinematic form. We leave the theater feeling superior, having condemned a monster who can no longer defend himself. It feels good. It feels moral. It is neither the forgotten humanity. Cohn's final years were not a parable of evil. They were a parable of human fragility. He was a man crushed between his hunger for dominance and his terror of intimacy. He taught others to fear weakness, and in the end, that fear killed him long before the virus did. Abbasi could have shown us this. A dying man who realizes that his greatest crime was refusing to be human. Instead, he gives us a cautionary cartoon. The audience is spared discomfort. The filmmaker earns applause. But art that flatters its audience is propaganda, not revelation. Real art risks empathy. It forces us to see ourselves in those we despise. The Apprentice refuses that risk. It prefers the safety of judgment. It offers catharsis instead of conscience. Truth without an audience. Outside the screen, the moral landscape remains tangled. Trump, for all his vulgarity, tapped into something genuine, the resentment of those who felt unseen. Cohn, for all his sins, was also one of the many victims of an age that mistook difference for disease. But nuance does not trend. Outrage does. So the film chooses outrage. Abbasi thinks he is unmasking power. In fact, he is auditioning for it. He has become Roy Cohn's last and most loyal pupil, the artist as manipulator, the storyteller as salesman, the critic as performer. Like his subjects, he controls the narrative and calls the control truth. And we, the audience, accept it, because we too are tired, because we want to feel moral without doing the work of morality, because hating the right villains makes us feel alive. The final reflection. The Apprentice is not a revelation. It is a mirror that flatters its viewers, a sermon that sells absolution for the price of a ticket. It teaches nothing about power that reality hasn't already taught us. That every age needs its devils, and that every devil is built from human clay. This film takes the oldest lesson, that power corrupts, and turns it into a product, slick, stylish, and sterile. It transforms truth into entertainment, and entertainment into virtue. And perhaps that is the final irony. Abbasi set out to condemn the machinery of manipulation, yet his own film runs on the same fuel. Emotion, distortion, spectacle. He has crafted a sermon against deception by deceiving beautifully. In the end, The Apprentice tells us less about Trump and Cohn than about the world that now applauds such films. A world that mistakes moral theater for moral thought. A world that prizes the comfort of hatred over the burden of understanding. Because today, truth has no audience. Only the lie still sells.